these laws are scheduled to enter into force pretty soon, so next year, probably 1st of January, and they will have an impact. So they will have an impact especially for the inbound provision of financial services, so foreign domiciled financial service providers having clients in Switzerland have to comply with more rules. And this is obviously good for the Swiss market.
But are the Swiss financial players really in a better position compared to foreign players that are entering the Swiss financial market?
That's a very good question. Also there we see a bifurcation of the market. So the big players, so the big banks, wealth managers, they already have to comply with other regulations, just like MiFID II in Europe. So they are very similar to the new Swiss rules and regulations. So for them, it's much easier to comply than, for example, smaller players. So small and mid-sized banks, due also to their legacy system, have a much harder time to actually comply with these rules.
You mentioned to me before the interview that the small and medium-sized banks are the ones that are struggling the most with the implementation from the Financial Services Act and the Swiss Institutions Act as well. What are the biggest issues for them?
A huge issue, obviously, is the increased costs. These are increased compliance costs. But then they also have legacy systems. So there's a lot of new obligations like best execution, documentation obligations and so forth, which require very high-tech systems. And this requires also a lot of investment, which in this area, in this time, not many banks can do.
So the logical question then is if those banks are going to survive these new legal reforms?
Yeah, this is a question. I mean, we see consolidation in the banking space for some time now. And obviously, regulation always leads to more consolidation because you need a bigger size.
So do you think that this regulation is actually needed, or is it actually killing some of these small and medium-sized banks, which is not good?
Yes. I mean, one of the key reasons why I have introduced this new law is because we want to have the equivalence decision by the Europeans to access their market. So it's not really that we want to introduce it, but we have to. And yeah, I'm a little bit afraid that also on the lower end of the market, there will be more consolidation.
But do you think, on the other hand side, that this will also create more business opportunities for Swiss financial players in the European Union?
In the European Union itself, immediately, probably not. But we all hope and are confident that hopefully in the mid-term to longer term, we'll get that equivalence decision by the European Commission. And then obviously we'll have much freer access into the European market.
Let's talk about the FinTech companies as well. Now, there's a new legal category governing the FinTech companies, obviously, especially those that manage between 1 million to 100 million Swiss francs. So are these new financial market reforms and laws a killer or a driver for the FinTech business?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So we have had for decades a very static licensing category situation in Switzerland. So basically we had the banking license, which was like the Gotthard of Switzerland. We have the securities dealer license. But now we have much more on
There
the
is a
plate.
light at the end of the Gotthard tunnel now, right?
So to speak, and the train is not coming towards us. That's the good news. So we have more choices, and especially with this new category also in the future, with this multilateral DLT trading system, we have even more choice.
So no train is approaching through the Gotthard tunnel. Does it mean that there is not a big, elephant coming and not a lot of headwind for the FinTech industry here with the new reforms?
No, I mean, I think everybody is pulling on the same string. So the government, the industry, the regulator, and we all want to foster this industry. And I think we are proactive, we are flexible, and we are doing the right moves. And from that perspective, I'm pretty confident.
Now, the Financial Services Act and the Financial Institutions Act, they both aim to make the space more competitive for financial industry players. But what about protecting clients? Are the clients better protected under this new legal framework?
This is a big question, which is very controversially debated. Obviously, some people say no, other people, especially consumer protection organizations, say yes.
And what do you think as a legal expert?
You know, at the end of the day, I think you have to strike a balance between consumer protection and over-regulating. And I think in Switzerland, with our history of a principle-based regulation, I think we are not that bad of finding that balance. But obviously, like in the tax area, we are not immune against influences from the European Union and other global jurisdictions.
And of course, the United States as well. So you mentioned to me earlier that in the US, of course, we have a lot of regulations, especially when it comes to ICOs, initial crypto offerings. So what about Switzerland? Are we, well balanced when it comes to regulations here?
Especially in the blockchain area, I think we are still the market leader. And I think with these new proposed changes to a wide array of different laws, not just financial market laws, but also bankruptcy laws, civil laws, we are taking that helm back again. And especially in the terms of ICOs, we have a very light regulatory regime here in Switzerland.
But still, there are a lot of regulatory gaps, especially when it comes to digital ledger technologies and blockchain and cryptocurrencies as well, which are some of the, even new regulations that the government and FINMA should look at.
Yeah. So I think we have done quite a lot in the last few months. So we have this FinTech license, we have this DLT trading system.
But in the European Union, they also have the e-money license.
Exactly.
So that is also a pretty solid regulatory framework, isn't it?
That is true, although there's
not as good as the Swiss one?
Not as good because, for example, in Switzerland, we don't regulate e-money. So the FinTech license, you're right, is basically the Swiss version of the e-money license. I think where we still a little bit have a gap is in the securities dealer area. So maybe we could have a FinTech securities dealer. That would be a good idea. But otherwise, I think we are covering almost all the areas because you also have to understand in Switzerland, unlike in Europe, we have much less regulation, especially for payment systems and e-money license, for example.
A lot of people are saying that the US and the European Union are overregulated and Switzerland underregulated. What is your point of view on that?
I don't think we are underregulated. I think we are reasonably regulated, meaning that with this principle-based regulatory approach, it allows us to really regulate the key areas because here the market participants trust each other. And I think this is key. And you have other jurisdictions who have another approach, which are very detailed, regulated. And I think this is also a sign of missing trust in the market participants. And obviously, a principle-based regulation always allows you to be more flexible and more creative.